What if I told you that the feeling of being alone at home might be the biggest illusion you've ever experienced? It sounds exaggerated, but anyone who has gone through something strange in the middle of the night knows exactly what I'm talking about. Living alone has always been seen as freedom, silence, privacy, doing whatever you want, whenever you want. At first, everything feels perfect, until small details start slipping out of place. A noise that doesn't make sense, an object out of position, a door you were sure you had closed. Simple things, easy to ignore, but that slowly begin to repeat themselves. That's exactly when your mind starts to conflict. One part of you tries to rationalize, to find logical explanations, to say it's just your imagination, fatigue, paranoia. But another part, the quieter one, begins to stay on alert. And the more you try to ignore it, the harder it becomes to pretend everything is normal. The problem is that situations like this don't start with something big. It's not a clear, direct, undeniable event. No, it starts small, almost imperceptible. And that's what makes it even more disturbing, because when you finally realize something is wrong, it might already be too late. And that night, it all started exactly like that. And before we go any further, let me ask you something quick. Because stories like this only matter when more people get to hear them, reflect on them, and maybe even protect themselves. So, if this kind of content is already pulling you in or making you feel even slightly uneasy, go ahead and leave a like now. It helps this video reach more people who may have gone through something similar and never had the courage to talk about it. And I really want to hear from you too. Comment below if there was ever a moment in your life when you felt that strange sensation of not being completely alone, even without any explanation. It may sound silly, but these experiences say more than we imagine. And if you enjoy real stories like this, the kind that mess with your mind and make you see ordinary situations in a completely different way, subscribe to the channel now. Because what comes next isn't just any story. It's the kind of experience that starts simple, but becomes harder and harder to ignore. At first, it felt exactly like what everyone imagines when they think about living alone. Total freedom. Not having to answer to anyone. Leaving the lights on at night. Watching whatever you want without interruptions. Eating whenever you feel like it. That silence that, in the beginning, feels almost therapeutic. And maybe you felt this too. That relief of finally having your own space. Your own control. Your own routine. Everything seemed under control. Every object in its place. Every sound familiar. Every corner of the house known. That matters. Because when you know your environment well, any small change starts to stand out. In the first few days, it was just peace. Nothing out of the ordinary. The routine fit perfectly, and the sense of independence only grew. But then those small details started to appear, so subtle that it would be easy to ignore them. A slight cracking sound coming from somewhere in the house, especially at night. Something normal, maybe the wood expanding, the kind of explanation you accept without even thinking. But it didn't stop there. There was one night when something caught a bit more attention. Nothing extreme, nothing that would cause immediate fear, but enough to feel unsettling. It was as if a pattern was starting to form, a specific sound, always round the same time. And the strangest part, always when everything was completely silent. And when you live alone, silence isn't just the absence of sound. It amplifies everything. Of course, the mind tries to help. It must be the wind. Maybe it's the pipes. It could be a neighbor, and you accept it. Because it's much more comfortable to believe that than to consider any other possibility. And that's exactly how these situations begin. Subtly, almost invisibly, until one day, something different happened. It wasn't just a noise. It wasn't just an impression. It was one of those things that makes you stop for a few seconds and think, This shouldn't be like this, an object out of place, small, easy to ignore, but impossible to fully explain. And in that moment, a strange feeling starts to grow, not fear yet. Something lighter, quieter, like a warning you try not to hear. You look round, try to mentally reconstruct what happened, search for any logical explanation that makes sense. But the more you think, the less clear it becomes. And the worst part isn't the object itself, it's the doubt it creates. Because from that moment on, you're no longer completely sure you're alone, and that changes the way you see everything around you. Every sound carries a different weight. Every shadow seems to move more than it should. And that feeling of freedom slowly begins to turn into something harder and harder to ignore. After that moment, something shifted. Not in the house, but in the way everything was perceived. You know when you try to act normal, but deep down there's a constant feeling of being watched. That was exactly it. The routine was still the same. The schedule hadn't changed. The objects were mostly in the same place. But now there was doubt in everything. And once doubt enters, silence stops being comfortable. That night, the atmosphere felt different. It was hard to explain why, but it was as if the air had become heavier. The light in the house, which once felt safe, now created shadows that stood out too much. And it's interesting how the mind works in situations like this. The more you try to ignore, the more you notice. Every detail gains importance. Every small sound becomes a possible signal dot. And then it happened again. A noise. Clearer this time. It wasn't that random cracking anymore that could be anything. It was more defined, like something lightly dragging, slow, short, and the worst part, coming from inside the house. At that moment, the first reaction wasn't immediate fear. It was control. The mind automatically searches for logical explanations, almost like a defense mechanism. It could be the wind coming through a gap. Maybe something fell. There must be a simple explanation. But the body doesn't react the same way as the mind. Because even while trying to convince yourself it's nothing, a tension starts to spread. Your muscles tighten, your breathing changes, and you begin to pay attention to everything around you. And this is where something subtle happens. You stop feeling like you're in the space, and start feeling like you're inside a dot. The difference is huge. Dot before, every corner of the house was familiar. Now, some places start to feel strange, as if they're not entirely safe, as if something is out of control, and it grows, little by little, without rushing, almost as if it's waiting for you to notice. And the most unsettling part is that it wasn't constant. It wasn't noise all the time. It wasn't obvious. It was intermittent, a moment of complete silence, and then that sound again. Always unexpected, always at the exact moment your attention started to relax. And that creates a very specific kind of tension, because you never know when it's going to happen again. The mind tries to stay in control, but starts to fail. You begin to remember the object out of place. You try to mentally reconstruct every step, every movement inside the house. You start questioning if maybe you forgot something, if you left something open, if you did something automatically without noticing. But the more you think, the less certain you become. And that's when a question appears that changes everything. What if it wasn't you? What if that small detail wasn't a mistake, wasn't distraction, wasn't coincidence? What if it was caused by something else, or worse, someone? At that moment, the feeling stops being just strange and starts turning into real alert. And when you realize that, it's no longer possible to ignore. From that point on, ignoring was no longer a comfortable option. But at the same time, facing it didn't seem like a good idea either. It's strange how the human mind works in these situations. You know something is wrong. You feel it in your entire body that something is out of place. But you still try to cling to any explanation that keeps you in a zone of safety. And that's exactly what starts to happen. The first reaction was simple. Get up and check. Nothing impulsive. Nothing desperate. Not yet. It was more like an attempt to prove to yourself that there was nothing there. Slow steps, heightened attention, your heart beating a little faster than usual, but still under control. Every movement inside the house seemed louder than it should. The floor creaking slightly, the sound of your own breathing. Everything felt amplified. And that's when something curious happens. The silence changes. Before, it was just the absence of sound. Now, it feels loaded. As if it's hiding something. As if it's not just silence, but a pause, waiting for something to happen. And the more you walk through the house, the more that feeling grows. The first check was in the obvious places. Living room, kitchen, front door. Everything seemed normal. Nothing out of place. No clear sign of intrusion. No concrete evidence that someone was there. And for a few seconds, you almost believe it was just your imagination. But then comes that uncomfortable thought. What if I didn't check properly? And that thought is dangerous, because it pulls you back into doubt. Makes you look again. Pay attention to details you would normally ignore. And that's exactly what happened. A closer look, one more step, a pause in front of a hallway that had never caused discomfort before and there. Something didn't feel right. It wasn't something visible right away. It was more of a feeling. That same feeling you get when you walk into a place and, without knowing why, feel like you should leave. The kind of silent warning that doesn't come from logic, but from somewhere deeper. The body notices before the mind. The lighting seemed different in that part of the house. The shadow darker, more defined, as if something was interfering with the light. And for a second, a very brief second, the thought crossed your mind that maybe this wasn't just a play of light and shadow. But still, the attempt to rationalize continued. Maybe it's the angle of the light. Maybe it's just your imagination. You're tired. But the more those explanations came up, the weaker they felt. And then, something happened that completely broke any attempt to stay in control. A sound, not distant, not soft, not subtle, but close enough to remove any doubt that it came from inside the house. Not outside. And in that exact moment, there was no longer any way to pretend it was just in your head. And that's exactly when something truly changed. Not with a loud noise, not with a door slamming, not like in the movies. It was worse, subtle, almost imperceptible. The kind of thing that enters your mind and slowly consumes you. I remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, trying to ignore that strange feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. And the more I tried to rationalize it, the more uncomfortable it became. Because deep down, we know when something isn't right. Even without any proof, the silence, once comforting, became heavy, dense, as if it had a presence. And then came the first detail that really froze me. A faint sound coming from the hallway. It wasn't footsteps. Not exactly. It was like something lightly touching the wall. Slowly. At that moment, my entire body went on alert. Heart racing, shallow breathing, that rush of adrenaline building uncontrollably. And the worst part, I started thinking about all those real stories we believe will never happen to us. You know, when you try to convince yourself it's just your mind, that it's the wind, the building, anything, except what you're imagining. I did that. I got up slowly, trying to stay rational, but every step toward the hallway felt wrong. Like I was walking straight towards something I didn't want to find. And then comes that internal conflict. Go back to the bedroom and pretend nothing happened. Or face it and find out what's causing it. And here's something many people ignore. But it changes everything. When you live alone, there's no one to confirm what you heard. No one to say relax. It was me. Everything depends on you. Your perception, your fear, and that amplifies everything. Absolutely everything. Because every sound becomes suspicious. Every shadow becomes a threat. Every detail out of place becomes a reason to question your own safety. I stood there for a few seconds, just listening, trying to catch any other sign, and then, again, the same sound, but this time, clearer, closer, as if something was moving inside the house. And in that instant, a question crossed my mind in a way I couldn't ignore. What if there really is someone here? If you've ever felt something like this, comment below. I wasn't alone. Because those who felt it know exactly how heavy that moment is. And this is just the beginning. Because when I finally decided to take a few more steps toward the hallway, I noticed something that changed everything I thought was happening. That was the exact moment I realized. The hallway light was on, and it didn't make sense. I was absolutely sure I had turned everything off before going to bed. Not a maybe. That automatic certainty you get after repeating the same routine every day. And yet, there it was. Dim, slightly yellow, casting strange shadows on the walls, as if the environment had changed personality in minutes. My body froze. Because now it wasn't just a sound. There was a visual sign, something concrete, and that changes everything. When you start seeing things out of place, your mind stops trying to explain and starts preparing. I stood there, trying to remember if I could have left that light on. I replayed every step of that night, every movement, but no, it didn't add up. And the more I searched for logic, the more the feeling of vulnerability grew. The house, once safe, now felt exposed, as if I was inside a place that no longer fully belonged to me. And that's one of the most terrifying feelings for someone living alone. Because the space meant to protect you starts to feel unfamiliar, unsafe. And then every detail becomes overwhelming. The way the light hits the wall, the faint sound of wind through a crack, the subtle creak of the floor, everything turns against you. I took another step, slow, careful, the kind of step you take trying not to make any noise, as if that could somehow hide you. And then I noticed something else. The bathroom door was slightly open, just enough to cast a thin shadow across the floor, and that sent a chill through me, because I had closed it. I remembered it was automatic, always closed. At that point, it was no longer about imagining. It was about connecting the dots. Light on, door open, sounds in the hallway, all together. They start forming a scenario you try not to think about, but that builds itself anyway. And the worst part isn't what you see. It's what you start imagining might be watching you at that exact moment. My breathing grew heavier, not from exhaustion, but tension. That feeling that any wrong move could trigger something. And at the same time, standing still didn't feel safe either. It's a powerful psychological pressure, because you feel like you need to act, but don't know how. And then comes the inevitable thought, if I'm not alone in here, how long has this been happening? I moved closer to the door, trying to hear anything inside, any sign, any confirmation. But the silence was worse, because it gives you no answers. It just amplifies everything in your mind. And the moment I gently touched the door, something moved on the other side. The instant my fingers touched the door, something shifted inside. Not loud, not abrupt, but unmistakable. A quick movement, like someone pulling back after noticing my presence. And in that second, everything inside me went into maximum alert. This wasn't imagination anymore. There was something there, and the worst part was not knowing what or who. My body reacted before my mind. I froze, completely, hand still on the door, breath held, heart pounding so hard it felt like it echoed through the hallway. You know that moment when you realize you've crossed an invisible line? When you leave maybe it's nothing and enter this is real. That was it. And from there, every decision felt wrong. Pushing the door meant facing the unknown. Stepping back meant giving space to something already inside my house. And that's one of the most disturbing feelings someone can experience, realizing the danger isn't outside. It's inside, in your space, where you should feel safe. That completely breaks your sense of control. My mind started firing possibilities. Someone broke in. Did I leave the door unlocked? A window open? Or had it been there before I even got home? And the more I thought, the more vulnerable I felt. Because no answer came with certainty, only bad possibilities. Then I did something almost instinctive. I tilted my head slightly, trying to look through the crack before opening the door. The hallway light didn't illuminate the bathroom well, so all I could see was part of the mirror and a section of the sink. Nothing out of place, nothing obvious, but the feeling didn't go away. It grew. And then came the detail that truly froze me. In the mirror's reflection, there was movement, not clear, not something I could immediately identify, but a subtle shift in shadow, like something passing quickly behind the door. And the most terrifying part, it couldn't have been me. The angle didn't allow it. It was inside. At that point, reality hits differently. There's no going back. You've seen it, felt it, connected the signs, and now the only thing left is to face what's there. But here's the problem. You are never ready for something like this. No one is. My hand trembled slightly. Not pure fear, but that mix of adrenaline and extreme tension, the kind that makes you hyper-aware of everything, yet freezes you. And in that state, I decided to push the door just a bit more, enough to see better. And the moment the door opened a few more inches, I heard something behind me, in the hallway. The sound was sharp, too close, not an echo, not something from outside. It was there, just a few steps behind me. And in that instant, my entire body reacted in a way I can't even describe. It was like everything inside me screamed at once. Don't turn round. But it's impossible not to. It's automatic, human. You need to know what's happening, even if you're afraid of what you'll see. I turned slowly, almost in slow motion, as if moving carefully could somehow soften the impact. And the hallway was empty, completely empty. The light on, shadows on the wall, the heavy silence again. But now it was different, because I had heard it. It wasn't doubt. It wasn't imagination. It was real. And this is the kind of situation that starts messing with your sense of reality. Because when you see something, you react. But when you hear something you can't explain, it stays in your mind in a much deeper way, echoing, forcing you to understand. And at the same time, making you question if you're still in control. I stood between 2 points. The partially open bathroom in front of me, and the empty hallway behind me, as if I was literally between 2 wrong possibilities. And then comes the thought no one wants. What if it's not just one thing? What if there's something in the bathroom and something in the hallway? At that moment, the entire environment felt different. The house that once felt familiar now felt unknown. Every wall, every object, every dark corner took on a new meaning. And the strangest part is how your mind fills in the gaps automatically. Every noise becomes movement. Every light shift becomes presence. You start feeling watched, even without seeing anyone. My breathing was uneven. I tried to control it, but couldn't, because my body had already understood what my mind was still denying. I wasn't safe. And once that realization hits, everything changes. You stop acting logically and start acting on instinct. Pure survival. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The front door. It wasn't the way I remembered. Not fully closed. Not exactly open. Just slightly ajar. And that made no sense, because I always locked it. Always. Especially living alone. And in that second, all the pieces came together in a way I didn't want to accept. The sound in the hallway, the light, the bathroom door, the movement in the mirror. If someone came in, they never left. My attention returned slowly to the hallway, but not to look for something visible, to feel for a presence. Because once you realize you might not be alone, you start searching for confirmation in everything. And then I heard breathing. Not mine. It was low, controlled, but there, close enough to know it wasn't distant, not from outside. It was inside the house, in the same space as me, and in that instant, everything became painfully clear. No more doubt, no more feeling. Presence, real, concrete, invisible. My entire body entered a state of alert I had never felt before. Not just fear, survival. Every muscle tense, every sense trying to capture something. And the quieter it got, the louder that breathing became. Subtle, but constant. Like someone trying not to be noticed. Too late for that. I didn't turn immediately. And that may sound strange. But in a moment like this, there's a second where you try to buy time. A second to think, to understand. Maybe find a way out. But there is no logical escape when the danger is already inside your space. And then, I turned slowly, very slowly. And everything felt slower. Time, movement, even the sound of my own body reacting. My eyes moved first, trying to catch any shape, any difference in the hallway. And for a second, nothing. The same emptiness, same light, same scene. But the breathing continued, and that's when I understood something that changed everything. I didn't need to see it to know it was there. Sometimes, the most real fear isn't what appears. It's what hides perfectly, what doesn't reveal itself, but shows its presence in other ways. My gaze dropped slowly, almost instinctively, as if something inside me was guiding it. And that's when I saw it. A shadow, not on the wall, on the floor. Right behind me, projected by the hallway light. But it wasn't mine. And that made my entire body freeze in a way I can't even describe. Because there was no more denying it, no more rationalizing. Someone was there, just inches away, sharing the same space, the same silence, the same air. The breathing stopped for a second. As if that presence realized I finally understood. And then, right next to my ear, almost like a whisper that shouldn't exist in that space, I heard a low voice say something I will never forget. And this is where I need to ask you, did you feel that too? Because if you made it this far, it wasn't by accident. If at any moment you felt tense, looked round, or had that strange sensation of not being completely alone, then you already understand the kind of experience we create here. Now do this. Subscribe to the channel. Because these stories aren't just meant to be watched, they're meant to be felt. And when you subscribe, you become part of this universe where every detail matters, where every sound, every silence, every feeling pulls you deeper. And I really want to hear from you. Comment below. I felt that. So I know you didn't just watch, you actually lived the story. And when you comment, you help others realize they're not alone in this feeling. Leave a like now, because it helps this video reach more people who also need to experience this kind of intense, suspenseful, emotionally charged story. And don't stop here. There's another video already on your screen, and trust me, it will affect you in a different way. So click and keep going, because sometimes the next story is closer to your reality than you think.